Hey guys, my name is Tito. I make videos on personal finance on my other channel. On this channel, I talk about other things. Like today, when I'll be reviewing the new Nollywood series on Netflix, Last Year's Single. Last Year's Single is about Belinda, Tammy, and Afua, three disillusioned young women who desperately want to get married at all costs. But after the various men in their lives teach them a few hard lessons, they begin to reevaluate their priorities in life and their criteria for choosing men. Last Year's Single is directed by Omoni Oboli. Now, this review will contain mild spoilers. The spoilers will be at a minimum though, because I suspect many of you watching are watching to find out if this series, Last Year's Single, will be worth your time. Don't worry, I understand. Before I dive into the review, however, I want to talk about what my expectations were about this series before I watched it. You see, before I watched it, I thought that this was going to be a movie, but it turns out it's a 13-episode series. And that didn't sit well with me because I'm not a fan of series. I feel like series are very time-consuming, so I actually watch very few series. But I decided to watch it anyway. The second surprise was that the late Karibi Fubara is actually in this series. Karibi unfortunately passed away towards the end of 2021. That now made me wonder, when was this series made? This series was made in 2019. That now made me worry, or it raised concerns, I should say, about how dated this series would feel and if the themes that they talk about on this series would still be relevant today, 5 years later. So suffice to say, I was quite curious about a number of things once I started watching this series. That said, let's dive into it, beginning with the performances. Omoni Oboli plays Belinda, the main character in this series, and I found Belinda to be quite annoying because of how desperate, frustrated, and confused she was concerning marriage. This character just kept on making bad decision after bad decision, and her priorities were quite misplaced, and it made me not like the character. But then again, I don't think I was actually meant to like the character. I think it was intentional for us to have issues with Belinda. Because of that, I think Omoni Oboli did a really good job playing this main character, right? Omoni Oboli also directs the series, and I saw the benefit of her being the star and the director the more I got into the series, because there are so many things that they try to address on this series concerning relationships and whatnot that I think the series benefited from the star of the series also being the director of the series. For now, let me talk about Toni, who plays Tammy in this series. Tammy desperately wanted to get married as well, in fact, even more than Belinda. And Tammy was in a long-term relationship, and she pretty much built her world around her man. And suffice to say, things don't go according to plan for Tammy, and she also makes bad decision after bad decision. And Tammy, the thing that confused me the most, I just remembered about Tammy, is the fact that she felt like her purpose in life was to marry and have children and to be a homemaker. That was her desire in life. So while watching the series, I kept on trying to be on board in terms of, okay, everybody's vision for their life is valid, everyone's dream is valid. This is Tammy's dream. I should be on board. I should say that's okay for her. But I struggled with it because I was not cool with the fact that somebody wanted to hinge their entire life and their happiness on another person, i.e. a man. She was essentially putting all her eggs in the basket of whoever she settles down with, and I had a problem with that. Hence why I found the character to be quite controversial, and I was conflicted about the character. But coming back to Toni, she does a really good job portraying that character and the character's frustrations and how she's being judged by everyone. I don't think I've seen Toni in that capacity. I was worried initially when I started the series, but I think Toni crossed the finish line rather well playing that character, and that character has thrown a few curveballs throughout the series. Moving on to Bimbo Ademoye, who also is a desperate character on this series. I think that's the theme for this series, desperation. Bimbo plays a desperate blogger who wants to make it, in the online entertainment space by all means. She has this other celebrity blogger that she looks up to, and she just wants to be as successful as, or even more successful than. And she does some underhanded things. She has very low or very few personal and professional morals and principles, and she's willing to just do underhanded things and just cross almost anyone for her blog to be a hit. And Bimbo Ademoye does a really good job portraying that desperate blogger, because we kind of know that kind of personality, in the real world. People who have very low morals and who are willing to just spread lies and just gossip so that their website will get clicks and get views, right? Bimbo does a really good job portraying that. And I think, this film being done or produced or filmed in 2019, I think that's around the time when I first heard about Bimbo Ademoye or first saw her in anything, which was Sugar Rush. I think Sugar Rush came out in either 2018 or 2019. And I think that was a different era of Bimbo Ademoye. That was, I think, a more fiery Bimbo Ademoye. So I could see a little bit of a difference in Bimbo's performance in this series, which was done back then, compared to her performances now. Bimbo still brings the fire in her performances today, but I feel like there was a hunger back then. Let's move on to the late Karibi Fubara. He plays Taye on this series, and I like that at the end of each episode on the series, well, from episode 2 to episode 13, in the end credits, they say R.I.P. Karibi Fubara. Like I said earlier, he passed away in 2021. Karibi did a really good job portraying Taye. I was trying to be on Tayo's side. So Taye is the boyfriend of Toni Tones' character, Tammy. And unfortunately, Taye is his scumbag. I think I was trying to side with Taye or see Taye in a positive light because he's played by Karibi, who is now, no longer with us. But at the end of the day, the things that Taye said and the things he did, he was not a nice guy. And Karibi played that character quite well. And watching him and hearing his lines and seeing the dynamic between himself and Toni Tones, their scenes were electric, by the way. I really enjoyed. They're two very powerful actors, so their scenes together were fire, in my opinion. So seeing all that and just seeing his performance generally on the series reminded me of how good an actor Karibi was. And we really did lose a gem, as far as male leads go in Nollywood. He was a fine actor. He really put 110% to his performances, and he's missed. R.I.P. Karibi Fubara. May he continue to rest in perfect peace. Honorable mentions to some of the other supporting acts on this series. You had Mawuli Gavor as Victor, from a really good performance from Mawuli. A really good performance from Taye Arimoro, who plays James. Chy Nwakanma, who played Gloria. Uzo Osimkpa, she played Nora in the series. She was also very good. And Kachi Nnochiri plays Chima in the series. The supporting acts were really good. Everyone worked quite well on this series. What I liked the styling and the wardrobe on this series. It wasn't anything extravagant, but I felt like it worked. Nothing I saw styling-wise or wardrobe-wise annoyed me. Production design was also quite good in my opinion. It wasn't like anything extraordinary once again, but I think it worked. Things were aesthetically pleasing throughout the series, and it was consistent from episode 1 to episode 13. I liked the story as well. If you're able to get past episodes 1 and 2, and if you're able to stomach the numerous cliches on this show, then I think you'll enjoy the series, and I think you'll like the story and the subplots, especially if you're into like these kind of dramas that are very heavy on love, marriage, and relationships. And speaking of that, I like that this series actually does a deep dive into marriage, love, and relationships. They talk a lot on this series, or this series really is about many of those things that we talk about whenever we are at games nights or at house parties. A few friends just hanging out casually, and somehow we end up talking about settling down and marriage and why dating is so hard. So that's what this series really is about. And they touch a number of topics that fall under that dating and marriage umbrella. Things like cheating, love versus money, finding the right person, dating for the right or the wrong reasons. All those things that are addressed on this series. And if you're like me, who likes that type of thing, heck, I have a whole podcast where I pretty much talk about dating and relationships and that type of stuff. So if you're like me and you like that stuff, I think you will like or appreciate those themes on this series. And since I hinted at my podcast, please feel free to check out my podcast, the 30-minute podcast. I'll link it in the card in the corner of the screen. Now, the last thing I liked was that this series had some really good lines, some one-liners and some lines of dialogue. And I want to actually read one or two to you guys just to let you know how good it was, right? So this one was from Karibi's character in episode 5. And the context was that a woman that he was in a past relationship with, kept on bugging him. So he had to tell her off. And he goes, "Did I not feed you? clothe you, put a roof over your head, and have sex with you. You cooked, you cleaned, you spread your legs. I went to work, I paid all the bills, and I gave you good D. So in my book, we're kind of even. When he said that, I was shocked, and he delivered that line so well. Now, another line I really liked was from Omoni Oboli's character, Belinda, where she's talking about how women give, but at the end of the day, they end up shortchanged in relationships. She goes, us women, we're giving our all, but we're all ending up in tears. Now, the final line that I want to share is from Mawuli's character, Victor. Now, Victor and another character, a woman on the series, they work well together, they like each other, and ideally you think that they should, get into a relationship together, but the woman wants more. She wants somebody more accomplished and somebody with more money than Mawuli's character, right? And once that becomes apparent to Victor, i.e. Mawuli's character, he says this to her. He says, isn't that what you women do? You have what you want, but you keep on digging. So yeah, this series had some good lines, if I'm being honest. What I didn't like. I didn't like how slow this series felt. I watched the entire thing at 1.5x speed, and still, it felt kind of slow to me. I also didn't like the fact that the three main characters on this series were so marriage hungry. Like the be-all and end-all of their existence was to find a man and to get married. It was quite worrisome. I found it to be quite worrisome, and I was concerned about the kind of message that was passing across, or that would pass across to the single people who would watch this series. But then again, I think what they were trying to do with this series was to mirror what happens in society, or the mindset in society, because if we're being honest, lots of people in society today just want to find love and get married. They don't have any other big ambitions or overriding or overarching principles or purposes in life, and it's quite sad. So on one hand, I see how they're trying to bring that out, but on the other hand, I worry if they were just reinforcing a negative stereotype in society. Who should see it? See this series, Last Year Single, if you enjoy dramas that are very heavy on relationship talk and relationship topics. Also see Last Year Single if you enjoy those Nollywood dramas or series that are very popular on YouTube. Finally, see Last Year Single if you like the actresses in this series, i.e. Omoni Oboli, Bimbo Ademoye, and Toni, of which two of them have very buoyant YouTube channels. In conclusion, this wasn't such a bad watch for me. However, I don't think I would have watched all 13 episodes if I didn't plan on reviewing it. I'd have probably jumped ship by episode 2, right? It got better the further on it went. And like I said, I'm into all these relationship topics and relationship talk. So I think that's why I was able to enjoy it. I was going to say endure it, but to be honest, I kind of enjoyed this series. It's not everyone's cup of tea. If you find yourself, or consider yourself rather, to be cerebral and you like intelligent movies or series, I don't think that this will be for you. Finally, I think it's worth mentioning that I like that there were lessons in this series. Maybe I should have mentioned that earlier when I talked about what I liked about the series. There are lots of lessons about marriage and dating on this series. You will leave the series understanding that the heart of man is desperately wicked. That's one. That people cheat and are unfaithful. That people really need to understand who they are and what they want before they get married. Because there are lots of people who want to get married, but they don't understand who they are or what they want. And that is a recipe for disaster. There are numerous lessons on this series, and I think it's part of what made it enjoyable for me. I rate Last Year Single 2.5 jollofs over 5. Guys, if you enjoyed this review, I hope you did. Please like it by clicking on the like button, and subscribe to this channel as well by clicking on the black subscribe button. On this channel, I don't just do Nollywood movie reviews. I also talk about other things. To check out some of the other things I talk about and to check out some of my past reviews, you can click the card in the corner of the screen. Also, you'll find there in the corner of the screen a link to my podcast, which I referenced earlier. My goodness, I'm so tired. This review has drained me. The cliffhanger. I forgot to mention the cliffhanger at the end of this series. That was quite a cliffhanger. I did not see it coming. I was so shocked. I hope they do season 2, just so we know how things ended. But that was quite a cliffhanger. My goodness. I almost forgot to talk about that. If you've seen the series, last year's single, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Take care.